Hello everyone. Alright, buckle up because now we are going to be talking about newborn care and neonatal disease, and this is a subject I'm super passionate about, so you better believe we are going to be covering a lot of material. Unfortunately, I really don't think that this is my best piece of art, but we'll just ignore that part because it'll give us a chance to talk about cute little babies. I've just finished up a month of working in the newborn nursery, so I've got lots on my mind. In terms of the art itself, it was pretty tricky to think of something to represent an entire newborn, so I ended up basing this piece on an ultrasound, which is actually a lot harder than it sounds. Ultrasounds are already pretty tricky to make sense of without training, and trying to translate that to this stylized art was even harder and took a lot of figuring out. You might even notice that for the first time on any of these pieces, I've actually brought out a white acrylic paint marker to use as whiteout too, which I'm a little embarrassed about, but I think it was finally necessary. Part of the issue is that in an ultrasound, there is an element of transparency to things. So when I first drew this, I drew both feet, and the bones of both feet were visible, even though they were placed one in front of the other relative to the viewer. Unfortunately, I just don't think that I was able to clearly communicate the overlapping feet in this context without it looking like a weird mistake. So I eventually went back and covered up the foot behind to clear it up, and then used a couple other touch-ups too, just for good measure. I also thought I would try something new with the background based on some other optical illusions I'd seen before, and again, somehow I just feel like the effect didn't really translate the way I wanted it to, and then I also don't love the way I ultimately chose to have the pattern go through the uterine lining, or perhaps to have included the inner wall of the uterus at all. Oh well. Now, what would you say if I told you that there was a supplement you could take that would reduce the risk of death from any cause by 14 times during the next year? I kid you not, people would literally be breaking down our office doors begging for the chance to get some of this miracle cure. Well, I also kid you not when I say that we already have this miracle supplement and it wasn't made by doctors. It's called breast milk. You heard me right. Infants in the United States that are exclusively breastfed are 14 times less likely to die of any cause in the first year of life. You heard me right. It's absolutely insane to think about. I mean, if there was literally anything you could do to make your child 14 times less likely to die, you would be absolutely insane not to do it, right? And yet we face this issue all the time. I will literally tell this to parents of newborns on day 1 of life, and they'll say, "Wow, that's crazy," and then go on formula feeding like nothing happened at all. And when I ask them if there's any particular reason why they're formula feeding, they will literally have no answer or justification. They'll just say no and then resolutely go on making a worse choice for their child's health. Well, let's talk a little more about why it is that breastfeeding is so good for babies anyway. Lots of people think that breast milk is just food. Wrong. Dr. Buescher from Eastern Virginia Medical School may have said it best when he said that human milk is a complex, specialized, and sophisticated human infant support system that provides protection, information, and nutrition to the nursing infant, not just food. This stuff is specially designed just to keep babies alive. One of the ways that you've likely heard of before is that breast milk provides immune support. This happens because mother's antibodies can be transferred into the breast milk, effectively providing a full adult's worth of hard-earned immunity directly to the baby to protect them, while they are still vulnerable and their immune system and body are still maturing. There's literally nothing else in the world that we have that can replicate this effect, and it is absolutely essential to help keep a baby from getting sick. Another interesting thing we mentioned was communication. Breast milk also contains signaling molecules that help control organ development, heat production, brain development, food preferences in childhood, and help develop a normal, healthy gut microbiome. Again, these are only present in breast milk. Another thing that breast milk can do is change throughout the course of the day. It has been shown that when it gets closer to night, that the mix of amino acids in breast milk change to include more tryptophan, which helps baby produce more melatonin and develop a healthy circadian rhythm, literally meaning that breast milk at night will help baby sleep better, which also means it will help mama to sleep better. Those are just some of the benefits to baby, in addition to being the best protein shake they could ask for in terms of nutrition. The benefits of breastfeeding don't stop there though. it also helps out the mother. Breastfeeding is energy intensive, and producing breast milk helps with maternal weight loss after pregnancy, and has been strongly associated with reduced risks of type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and cardiovascular disease. Furthermore, the hormonal changes associated with breastfeeding also help reduce the risk of breast cancer and ovarian cancer. The oxytocin from breastfeeding helps recovery after birth by promoting uterine contraction and decreasing uterine blood loss, and it is also a natural, although I absolutely would not rely on it, way to reduce the likelihood of pregnancy and increase birth spacing. Breastfeeding also helps reduce the risk of postpartum depression by increasing oxytocin and prolactin levels, improving mother-child bonding, and I would also like to point out that the skin-to-skin contact promoted by breastfeeding is really good for babies' temperature regulation and stress reduction. It always breaks my heart to see babies set aside in a crib, wrapped in a blanket with a bottle in their mouth instead of being held up to cuddle on their mother's chest. Well, Dr. J. Player, you may say, that's all well and good, but what about people who can't breastfeed? And to you, I say, that's actually only true for a very small minority of people compared to the number of people who can and should breastfeed but do not. Some of the more common things that will truly stop breastfeeding include breast surgeries that sever ducts or nerves, like a breast reduction or mastectomy, active drug use, active infections like untreated HIV, taking necessary medications that aren't safe to breastfeed with, or a history of hormone-related fertility problems on the mother's side. On the infant side, some true hurdles center around the inability to extract milk, which may occur in very premature or small newborns, those with oral developmental problems like a cleft lip or palate, medical problems like infections, and neurological problems. There are many other things that can make breastfeeding more difficult, however, such as maternal obesity, low or high maternal age, breast implants, hormonal problems, a need to return to school or work early, mental health issues, being a first-time mother, and some anatomical differences in the breast or nipples, although most of these things can still be overcome with dedication and a commitment to exclusively breastfeed, and I strongly advise seeking the help of a lactation consultant for anyone having difficulty. There are a lot of myths surrounding breastfeeding, so let's talk about that. Something that you may hear remnants of is that formula is healthier for babies, or something along those lines, because formula companies pushed that narrative decades ago until they were largely scienced into oblivion. Now, the evil whisper in your ear that you'll hear much more commonly is that sure, breast milk is good, but you might not have enough. Myth. Unless you're in one of those rare exceptional categories I mentioned before, this simply isn't true. I think I see this most frequently with new mothers who start to nurse on day 1, but are distraught because they feel like their milk isn't coming in, and they then end up formula feeding instead. This is simply giving up too early. The truth of the matter is that it does take some time for milk to come in, but the colostrum that comes first is highly nutritious for babies, and babies usually only take about 5 milliliters of breast milk on the first day of life anyway. Not only is this normal, but it's actually very important, as breastfeeding the baby, even if it's only colostrum, is what will help stimulate the rest of the breast milk to come in and increase production. Whereas if you quit too early, the positive feedback loop will never have the chance to fully start. It really takes a couple of days for the quantity of breast milk to increase significantly, and multiple early breastfeeding attempts are what helps stimulate that milk to come in. Another common myth is that breastfeeding should hurt, which is simply not true, and if it is hurting too much, then that may be a reason that a mother is reluctant to or chooses not to breastfeed. The truth is that if breastfeeding is hurting, then most likely the baby's latch isn't very good. Most often this is because not enough of the breast is in baby's mouth, only the nipple is, when really the nipple should be reaching back towards the back of baby's throat near the palate, sparing the nipple from excessive pressure. If breastfeeding is causing a lot of pain, then again, I would strongly recommend meeting with a lactation specialist to help with troubleshooting. Another myth is that you'll have to stop breastfeeding if you go back to work or school, or whatever you may be doing. This one is admittedly a bit more tricky, because it is definitely harder to accommodate, and I recognize that resuming normal activity is rarely a mother's first choice. However, I say this is a myth because even if separation from a newborn is necessary, pumped breast milk can still be fed to them. Federal law in the United States requires workplaces above a certain number of employees to make reasonable accommodations and provide a separate room that is not a bathroom for pumping breast milk, and they are required to pay through the time spent pumping milk. Pumping will allow milk production to continue, and milk can be stored and saved so that it can be provided to the infant wherever they are being watched. This brings me to another point I'd like to mention. I would say that the majority of new mothers I talk to say that their plan for feeding baby is breast and bottle, meaning formula, which I feel like is kind of a default answer most of the time, meaning that yeah, they want to breastfeed, but if it feels inconvenient, then maybe they'll throw on a bottle just to be safe. Well, I'll just go ahead and say it. Breastfeeding requires a full commitment. In almost every case, people who say they want to do both will end up exclusively formula feeding instead. And why might that be? Well, it probably has something to do with the fact that baby formula by dry weight is about 50% straight sugar. Yeah, you heard me right. Far sweeter, far more fattening, and far less healthy than breast milk. So that baby is very quickly going to learn to prefer formula instead of breast milk because it tastes so much sweeter, and eventually they won't bother taking breast milk at all, which benefits formula companies just fine. The more addictive their product, the less breast milk babies drink, the more they sell.